Hello there everybody. Today we're going to talk about Vinland Saga, or as I call it, Vinlando. We're going to talk about Season 2 of the anime, which ended recently, the manga, which is ongoing. We're going to talk about the past, we're going to talk about the future, where it's all going. I have a lot of thoughts on this, so I don't have any notes. I'm just sort of going to, spitball this. Let's see where we go. Vinland Saga Season 2, is it good? I feel like there's a lot of divisiveness out there. I don't know the consensus among, let's say, normies, but I feel like there's a lot of people who say, oh, Season 1 was better, and this one was boring, didn't have as much action. It's true, it didn't have as much action. And I do think Season 1 was better. So literally, I just said all those things are true. However, to say that Vinland Saga Season 2 is not good is, in my opinion, incorrect. There's plenty of kino to be had in this season if you knew where to look. And there were a few things that I felt held it back a little bit. So let's go into the great things. Now, at the end of Season 1, Askeladd is killed. And Thorfinn's whole reason for living up to that point was to kill Askeladd. So imagine your entire being, your entire existence being ripped apart from you. And so we find Thorfinn on the farm as a slave, basically a shell of a person. He's just living. He could care less. And throughout the course of the season, we're really tracking Thorfinn finding his new purpose. This, to me, is good storytelling. It's good character building. The author does a very good job of tapping into real life emotions and creating real characters who would do things that real people would do. As he beats the shit out of the other people on the farm, you're like, yeah, okay, great. The Thorfinn the fighter's coming back, and then his pacifism comes out. And of course, it all leads us to the big line, which is, I have no enemies, which is the central part of Thorfinn's extreme pacifism. Season 2, it's not about Vikings killing each other, and that does happen, but it does take some time, but it really is the story of a character, Thorfinn, and another character, Einar, who are finding themselves. And of course, we have Canute, who, Thorfinn's over here, Canute's over here, and they're switching. The whole thing with the head haunting him, and him killing his brother, it's riveting. The story of Canute is so good. One of the things I love about the whole series is the author's way of tying real life events, real history into the story. Canute telling the ocean to stop is a real life event that happened. It is famous of the real Canute, and it's sort of like, well, was it a part of his ego, or was he actually teaching a lesson? Vinland Saga went with teaching a lesson. So much of Season 2 is a slow burn. However, if you're a thinking intellectual such as myself, you do like that. It is nice. Now, however, sometimes it was too much of a slow burn, and I'm going to specifically point at, what was his name? Gardar, and Gardar's death, and his girlfriend as well. They just took, 3 episodes to die. By the end of it, I said, oh my god, will you guys frickin' die already and just get lost? They really milked it. And the whole thing with Gardar, it's like, yes, he went to war. It's, again, a compelling story. He ruined his family. His child died. And you really are supposed to, the show wants you to really feel sorry for these two characters. But you really just, it's like, there's a level to how much we can care about this. Even Anne, whose empathy, I'm going to cry over everything queen, only cared so much. She wasn't just flat out saying, die already, like I was. But you could have made the whole series 3 episodes, maybe 4 episodes shorter, and the pacing would have felt better. What would my score be for Season 2? I'd give it probably an 8.5 or a 9. I love that Vinland Saga is willing to go there, where it presents this humanity as being brutal, which is so overdone, but it's presenting history in an accurate way with the Vikings killing people, and that's in Season 1 mostly, the innocent people they killed. And the master, who's otherwise a really nice guy, breaking psychologically and having a moment to where even though he kills his love interest, you still feel sorry for him when it's all said and done. At least I did, because he had a moment of weakness, and that happens to people. Now, that's not to say we condone the behavior or we think it's okay, but it's to say he had a weak moment, and the author making us feel sorry for that still. That's good writing. It's good writing. I do have to say that every song from this season, OPED, were so good. My favorite one was Without Love. However, I am a little perturbed and confused as to why the full version doesn't have this. It's my favorite part of the song, and it's just not as magical without it. Just one more time. It's great. However, I will say that Mukangyo probably will never be beaten. That song is so freaking good, and to me embodies the feel of Vinland Saga so well. And I do love the other song. Inside his head, only you can put it on Monty's head. That one is good. Now, let's go look ahead to the future. A lot of people don't like what will be season 3. I happen to like it a lot in parts, and especially the character of Hild. Now, we're getting into spoiler territory if you're an anime only, so I don't know, maybe just get lost. The character of Hild is a masterstroke, again, of writing, where essentially Hild is to Thorfinn as Thorfinn is to Askeladd. And I'm sure many of you who have read this have already made this connection, but they're the same exact circumstances. Thorfinn killed her father because he had no choice. His life circumstances forced him to. Just as Askeladd killed Thorfinn's father because life circumstances, he had no choice. It's the same thing. And so Thorfinn's quest of revenge, Hild's quest of revenge, you cannot say, well, Hild shouldn't do it because Thorfinn sought to do it, and it just, so good. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the manga. There's a couple things to talk about, and chiefly the author's wokeness, as they say. We have what you could consider a transgender character. Now, this is very dangerous for me to even talk about. But what I'll say is I know a lot of people are like, oh, come on, why are you doing this? And I'm withholding judgment on this because we don't know yet what this character is going to do. It is kind of interesting because if Thorkel had a son and the mom didn't want the son to go to war, that's what, she would do. So it's sort of, is it a forced in piece of wokeism? Is it a running joke? I happen to think it's probably more along those lines, a gender bender, because the Japanese find that funny. What purpose will this character ultimately serve? I think that's going to be like, if ultimately it's like, oh yes, I can't even get into specifics without getting into trouble, but I think the determination on this has yet to be made and concluded until we see what's going to happen. The whole idea of I have no enemies and Thorfinn's extreme pacifism, it goes too far in my opinion. When they're in Vinland and there is a threat and they want to build a wall to protect themselves from this threat, and Thorfinn says, no, you can't do that because we're going to be showing that we're afraid, and that's going to be a sign of aggression. Well, it's kind of like if you have a home and you shouldn't put in a security system because that might be seen as a sign of aggression. The truth is, and maybe Thorfinn's going to learn this, it all depends on what the author chooses, but the truth is that evil exists, it's everywhere, and you can't just naively pretend it's not real. All you need to do is look at what's happening in major cities like San Francisco, Portland, Chicago, and just look at the senseless violence that happens. A woman walking past and a guy hits her with a brick. You can't just say, I have no enemies. You do. whether you realize it or not. So, if we break it down further, perhaps really what he's saying is, you have no reason to hate anybody. Okay, that's fine. But that still doesn't give you a reason to put everybody's life at risk on Vinland because you don't know the behavior of what those other people are going to do. And we know there's going to be a war based on history, or a battle at least. So I feel that Thorfinn is naive here and being extreme in his views. The other thing I want to say about his pacifism is that his whole thing is, I want to build a world without slavery, build a world without, suffering, I don't know. But the world without slavery part, we know he fails. And it's still to this day, there is slavery all across the world. So I am hopeful that Thorfinn will learn a hard lesson about the reality of man and humanity being unsavable, something like that. Now, what's going to happen? There's some possibilities that are very keen here. Thorfinn could revert to his old ways. Let's say his wife gets killed, his pregnant wife gets killed by the Indians, and that makes him go berserk, and then he ends up slaughtering people. That's dark, and I don't want it to happen because I like Thorfinn and I want him to get the happy ending. But it would be kino from a storytelling perspective. One thing the author has done well is present things that happened in history and say, okay, it could have happened this way, and he's got this other character, Bug Eyes, who's the other Thorfinn. So Thorfinn goes back in real life and leaves Vinland. Well, in our story, that could be Bug Eyes, who's Thorfinn, who leaves. And our main character, Thorfinn, could stay. I could very well see him staying, fighting with the natives, and then being like, oh, I want to live this land of peace and love. That, to me, would be not good. The author can go in so many different directions. Right now, we have Hild, who was pointing her bow gun at the chief of the Indians, thinking that somehow killing him was going to prevent war. And this is like the worst idea ever. And thankfully, Thorfinn came in and prevented her from doing that right at the last second by coming in for peace talks, which that's where we're at right now. Probably by the time this video goes up, maybe there'll be another chapter. Now, Canute, who's one of my favorite characters, made an appearance where he was killing some of his people because of this virus that is spreading around. Wouldn't that have been fun if we did that during COVID? Maybe on the next one, the next epidemic, we can do that. But my hope, my real hope for the ending is that Canute plays a part. Obviously, that would require either him going to Vinland or Thorfinn leaving and going to him. I'm hoping that that chapter wasn't just a one-off of like Canute being like, oh, what would Thorfinn do in this situation? I think what I would kind of want to see is Thorfinn and Canute teaming up. Now, obviously, that wouldn't be to fight some kind of big bad. Maybe Thorfinn takes the lessons from Vinland to Canute, and they end up becoming like partners and ruling together. One of the concerns is the author and his cuckery, let's say. So let me read you a little something here. The author gives these notes after certain chapters in the manga. All Vikings started as babies, of course, and the same painstaking care must have been taken to raise them into adults. And yet, once they were adults, they rushed to their deaths, killing others and causing misery. I bet those Viking mothers were so exasperated. But even knowing what would eventually happen, they still raised their sons. Mothers are so great. Men are so stupid. So, I don't have a problem with that note, really. It's a great observation. But the men are so stupid part, that's a bit of a generalization, bit of like very feminist, the cancerous feminism kind idea. Men are so stupid. Well, you want to talk about childish? That's a bit of a childish idea. So it's a bit concerning there. And I have another one here. So he talks about a Viking warrior who was female. A look at history generally suggests that no matter where you go on the globe, it's the men who wield violence and the women who suffer on account of it. Roughly speaking, history is a chronicle of wars, and wars are basically when a bunch of hot-headed men get together and blow off steam. I feel awful for the women of the world. The problem is men idolize power. They want to solve everything through strength. They become obsessed about winning and losing and killing. Maybe it's just the increase in physical stamina that makes them act that way. So what kind of person was the woman in the Swedish warrior's grave? Did she ever kill anyone with that sword? Was she in fact a warrior? If so, did she want to be one? Or was there some set of circumstances that forced her to pick up the sword? It's fascinating to me. There's no way for me to know how she felt about any of this. All I can do is pray that she wasn't simply a victim to man's history of power. Okay, so the author hates men. These observations there's nothing wrong with them, but when you put it in a framework of men are terrible, I think that is just incorrect. There have been plenty of women who've been in charge, and there have been plenty of women throughout history who have done terrible things. So to just say, oh, men are this, men are that, you could say humanity, sure. There's plenty of fictional works that hate on humanity. But to just say men, it's concerning. And there's other notes like that. If you have them, please link them in the comments for others to see. It is concerning for where is this going to go? How is this all going to end? Will it be a woke ending? That's what we don't want. It almost seems like, based on what I said, you may think, oh wow, Greg, you really don't like the author. You really don't like Vinland Saga. Well, I do. I like it a lot, and that's why I care. We know how the Japanese are with endings, so let's not get our hopes up. I'm very cautiously optimistic. Every week I get that notification there's a new chapter, or every month, excuse me, and I get nervous. I'm like, oh God, please don't be bad. Please be good. I want to recommend this to you. This is a book. It's called The Big Book of Pain. It is about torture and really just horrible things, mostly torture, throughout history. And it really puts things into perspective, and I think Vinland Saga does a good job of that, of showing the truth. Now, people today are like, oh, the world is the worst it's ever been. Nuh-uh. Take a look. Look at how the Vikings kill so many innocent people, and they rape, and they pillage, and they kill. Take a look at how people used to act, and really understand that evil is real. You do have enemies, whether you know it or not. At this point, we're just rambling. All right. Thanks for coming by. Have a wonderful time, and like and subscribe. We'll see you another time. Goodbye.